Hello, welcome to Karma, Destiny and Choice. Today we will be looking at love and the law of karma. This is a subject that I understand sits deep with many individuals. Hello, Sister Denise. It's great to have you back in the studio with us.
Hello, Magla.
Throughout this series, we have looked at the subject of love from various angles and part of other episodes. But because it's something that is so deep and all-consuming as far as humanity is concerned, I thought that we'd look into it much deeper. What is love from a spiritual perspective?
Love is one of the quintessential qualities of the soul. So it is the essence of what a soul is, and it comes from the energy of God. A soul is a being of light, that is a being of energy, and one big component of that energy is love. Purity, peace, power, love, bliss are the 5 elements of the soul. When a soul is depleted, the hunger that a person has is a hunger for love, because love is a nurturing, nourishing characteristic. When a person comes into relationship with God or with anyone or with anything, it's all about getting that energy of love. When a person is depleted, they are really hungry, and so they're looking for love. It's unusual for a person to look for getting their love energy from God. Generally, they're looking for someone to be in love with and someone to be in love with them. When 2 people come together in love, people call it chemistry, people call it ecstasy. It is all about this fusion of 2 beings and an exchange of energy. But the problem is that at this period of time, the souls are depleted, but they don't feel depleted, especially when they experience coming together in love, because you feel happiness, you feel fulfillment, you feel excitement that finally I have found what I was looking for. But it is deceptive, because while that is true, it's still very temporary, because the amount of energy contained in the 2 parties is very limited, and it doesn't fulfill the need of the soul. The soul can only really be filled by such a connection with God. And when you're in body consciousness, you can't make contact with God.
You use the word love, and in the same paragraph you use the word deception. How are we deceived? It is quite obvious that in the world, love and sex has come to mean the same thing.
Definitely, because when there is a sexual fusion between 2 people, there's a very, very strong exchange of energy, and there's total loss of spiritual power. But a person doesn't detect that. This is why it can easily become an addiction. This is why also later on in the relationship, couples try to use a sexual intercourse as a way to repair the relationship, because the idea is to go into ecstasy, to go into fulfillment, to go into satisfaction.
The reason that all across the globe, that's what people want, desire, aspire to, hope for their entire lives, is because of the feelings attached to it. Yes. There's the physical element, the obvious, and then there's feelings attached to it. For most, it feels wonderful. All that you described feels fabulous. But where's the caveat in this? What's not visible?
In a relationship, the sexual part finishes fairly quickly, and then you have to move into a much more subtle and deeper aspect of relationship, which is a heart connection and the relationship has to be cultivated. There's a lot of caring and paying attention on the other person, and you have to engage in mutually beneficial exchange of karma. But when you do that, you're using up your energy, and what happens with people is they use it all up and then they can't provide what they would love to provide, and they especially cannot satisfy the hunger of the other person. And this is why in any deep relationship, if you have a strong connection with God, you can bring in that energy into yourself. Then you're not nourishing yourself from the other person. You're nourishing yourself and you're maintaining your independence. It becomes a non-dependent relationship. Otherwise, people fall into dependent relationships, and then the initial strong attraction and happiness turns into its opposite, and it becomes dissatisfaction, conflict, complaints. That initial rush of connecting together is the law of karma causing a situation where people come together, because if they're not together, the payment of the karmic debt cannot occur. And so this is why it begins with strong attraction, and then after a while, when they're really connected, it turns into its opposite: repulsion, conflict, distress, difficulty, and so on.
People are in search of their slice of heaven. And what you are saying is that
they end up settling a karmic account, and then also intensifying the karmic debt, because they don't understand what's happening.
In pursuit of heaven, people land up in hell.
Well, they don't have to land up in hell. Usually they do. Okay, if you're going to say, okay, you want love, you want an intense, intimate relationship, you are calling forth a karmic debt to be settled. On the one side, you're getting something that you want. A relationship is a big project. But also that project is fraught with difficulties. So you need to develop all sorts of skills, powers, virtues, and maintain your independence in order for that relationship to turn into a relationship of harmony.
A harmonious relationship between any couple anywhere in the world doesn't happen by itself. It takes work.
It takes lots of work.
Although many relationships fail, the vast majority fail, any relationship has the potential for success as long as people work on it.
Yes, but they don't know how to work on it. So there needs to be an education, because very often people say, okay, it didn't work with this one, I'll exchange it for another one. And you go out of the frying pan into the fire, because ultimately it doesn't really matter which person you decide to end up with. It's always work.
I'm looking at the spectrum and what you keep referring to, equal and opposites. If someone gives you happiness, does that mean from that same person you will experience an equal amount of sorrow?
Yes.
Oh! Why? Who decided this? What decided this?
It is.
I'm going to speak on behalf of the millions. That is not fair. Not fair. Okay, hold on. You like shocking people right now. Okay, so someone gives you happiness, that same person will give you the same amount of sorrow.
They will.
And if somebody gives you love, there is the equal amount of hate in the same relationship.
Yes. You might not call it hate, but you will call it neglect or something like that. The problem is not that they give you happiness and they give you sorrow. That's not really what's going on. You start to use them as your source of nourishment, and this is your first mistake, because once you do that, then you put yourself into a karmic obligation to take the opposite from them. And so the skill in a person who learns about karma is not to take the happiness, but to be a little neutral about it, because then you can be neutral about when the person starts giving you the other.
Yeah, I've yet to meet a person who's pulled that off, because as far as relationships are concerned, they elicit feelings like intensity, intimacy, passion. Now, are you saying put a break on all of this? The reason I ask is, who wants to lead a boring life? We want the highs. People engage in intimate relationships, and we're specifically talking about intimate relationships in today's episode, because they want the passion, they want the intimacy. It makes one feel alive. There are many who believe that if you do not have love in your life, what is the point of being alive? For centuries, humanity has been known to be strongly in pursuit of all of the highs. And you are bursting the bubble. Why?
I'm not trying to make people miserable. Put it this way, another way you can put it. No, really. You say you want the ecstasy. Can you handle the agony that goes with it? That's the question. If you are such a person who can manage both ends of the spectrum, and you can get yourself through the opposite when it comes along, go for it. But most people are not strong enough.
Yeah, like I said, haven't met such a person yet who can be neutral in an intimate relationship.
One is neutrality, but the other is if you can stretch to both ends of the spectrum, because as far as you go at the side of ecstasy, you have to go that far on the side of agony. And if you're up for it, go for it.
What you're saying is if you take happiness from a relationship, then you will be taking sorrow equally from the same relationship.
It's not that you will be taking it by your desire to take it, it comes. It's just the law of karma says if you want to go very far on the side of ecstasy, you will be going the same amount on the side of agony. Can you do that? It's a neutral question. If you can, then go for it. But most people, they want to take the ecstasy, but then they can't handle the agony that goes with it. So the sensible thing, which is what psychotropic drugs do for people who are manic depressives, they chop off the top and the bottom ends so that you keep within a range that you can manage.
What then? What must one do?
The thing that people just don't get is that the passion and the ecstasy and everything is the trick of the law of karma to get two people together. But it's a trick because there's a karmic account that has to be settled, and this is why it turns into its opposite, which is the pain, the suffering, the emotional, the heartache, all of these different negative emotions that you have to manage, which is the settlement of karma in that particular relationship, because it's a relationship of emotional intensity. You have to have spiritual power so that you can cross that terrain of the agony. And if you have that kind of power, or if you generate that kind of power, this is magnificent, because you will be able to handle many karmic accounts through that power. And this is called settlement of karma through yoga, because you get that power through yoga. And then you can go for the extraordinary people that are wonderful, but then there's the other side of the spectrum that comes with them. your relationship then goes through this process and you move into a mature level of the relationship, but you have to cross a tricky terrain where both people have to do the work. It can't succeed if only one person does the work. And so your relationship has to be negotiated in a very deep and intimate way at every step. And that requires a lot of skill and a lot of courage and willingness to risk, because you have to be completely open and honest with the other person to the deepest level. When you do practice yoga and you do go into the depth of the laws of karma and you get to know all these things, incredible people will come into your life. They will come in there as an opportunity for you to develop very refined skills. Sometimes you will make mistakes and fall down and all kinds of terrible things will happen, and then you have to cross that. It's anything but boring, believe me, anything but boring.
I've ended this relationship because it didn't work out. What's going on there? Is the relationship the problem or the person the problem?
They're assuming that the relationship will sort itself out by itself. No, there will be problems in the relationship. There have to be. And they are necessary because by being in a bad situation, you need to acquire the skills to get across it. And you also may be in a relationship with somebody who is so dysfunctional that it's wiser for you to end the relationship, but you have to be able to judge it. A lot of people come from dysfunctional family backgrounds, so they have a radar which attracts them to the most dysfunctional people, and it's an action replay of the dysfunctionality in their families. To come out of that dysfunctionality, you have to do so much work on yourself. It's generally recommended in, say, addiction recovery programs, do not get into a relationship until you're very far ahead in your recovery program. And I would also suggest that to anyone who's embarking on a course of spiritual development. First priority is yourself. And once you've got yourself to a very developed degree, and you really looked after your and taken account of and faced your character defects, then only you're ready to get into strong relationships. But the problem is you have karmic accounts, and so they will land in front of you, and it's just part of the spiritual journey. You have your theoretical, you have your practice, and then you have your karmic accounts that come to give you further instruction, as it were.
When you speak about fixing or putting things right, you're referring to working on oneself. And I've seen a couple, both gay and straight, trying to fix each other.
If you're in a very close relationship, a lifelong relationship, you have to work on the relationship. You have to work on yourself. You can't really work on the other person. But you need to set limits and boundaries. You need to create a kind of social contract with each other, and that has to be renegotiated whenever there's any change in your situation, which happens from time to time. So you need to learn the skill set of sitting down and negotiating what the problem is, what you want, what they're willing to give, etc., etc. But throughout the whole process, you have to understand and come to terms with the fact that mostly the problems arise because you are spiritually depleted. So your primary responsibility is to fill yourself with spiritual energy. And the more you get into the physical or the emotional passions, the more your spiritual energy that you accumulate gets drained out. Because the problem is spiritual depletion, filling yourself is a very high priority, and it has to be part of the process of cultivating the relationship.
So the good news is that not all love relationships are doomed. That's the good news. The not so good news is that individuals have to work on it.
Yeah, but it should be common knowledge, but I don't know why it's not.
Not common knowledge. There are many who choose not to get married, but just live together as a couple. Does the formality make a difference as far as the karma is concerned? I read an article not too long ago that said that marriage has become an outdated institution because young people prefer to cohabit rather than formalize or legalize their relationship.
That's okay, but then anyone can invoke the common law, and then it's effectively the same as the bondage of marriage. And you see, when the relationship ends, like a divorce or a separation, then you have to separate the property. If there's any children, there are issues there. And sometimes it can be very acrimonious because it's all tied up with this story of the settlement of karma. So coming together is because of karma, breaking up is because of karma, and every step that you take is also an act, which is a piece of karma. Unless you are really skilled in doing the right thing at the right time in the right place within the relationship, instead of paying off the karma, you start accumulating more. If you want to enjoy close, intimate, personal relationship, you have to be very skillful in the art of having a relationship with someone. And some people are naturally very good at it, but most people are naturally very bad at it.
Because of their own dysfunctionality.
Because of their dysfunctionality, because no one ever teaches them how to do this. If they would be grown up in a functional family, it is understood that they would be learning these skills as part of their family life. And because of that, there's an assumption that you don't need to teach it. But because most families are dysfunctional, you really need to teach it. It needs to be part of the school curriculum. And I think something of that nature is beginning to creep into the school syllabuses because of so many children needing psychological counseling because of their traumas in childhood and their dysfunctional family life, and very few people live with both parents. So that's already traumatic for the children. So they never learn how a good relationship looks. They just know how a bad relationship looks, so they learn that.
So you're not saying to people, do not go forth and fall in love. You're not saying that. What is your message then, Sister Denise? Are you saying to people, go ahead and fall in love, do it carefully, or don't do it at all?
Falling in love is not something that you choose. It happens to you.
Oh, really? Kind of sweet, that. But what
it means is there's karma. And so, okay, you find yourself dropped into this shark-infested waters of falling in love, so you have to watch out for the sharks because they will come and bite you. And so you need to be very skilled to keep them happy and peaceful. Be very careful about every step of your relationship with the other person. Never leave anything to be assumed or understood. Everything has to be talked through so that you avoid misunderstandings. Be very clear about your feelings and meditate, because do not let this become a dependent relationship. You fall in love and along with that comes this feeling that that person will make me happy. And then you have expectations, assumptions, etc., which are not implied by the situation. What's implied is you walked into a very tricky piece of territory, and you need to develop skill sets quickly because there's lots of dangers. And it can give you a tremendous richness in life. It is for that, but you have to play the game well.
That was a lot, I mean, really a lot. And as you may have surmised by now, there was nothing romantic about today's chat at all. Zero romance, okay? Sister Denise has blasted many illusions out the water. And I think the deepest message is, by no means run away from what people call love in today's world, but do so carefully, proceed with caution, and also to understand relationships require work. And what's going on top is not necessarily fully reflective of what's going on underneath. So be wise in relationships. I think that's the deepest message for today. And thank you for spending this half an hour with us. I hope this has been of some benefit to you, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.